My spouse and daughter ignored me for weeks after I lost my job. So I sold our holiday home and relocated to another state without informing them. Now, they're pleading to return. At 52, I never imagined I'd be starting over at this stage of life. 3 months ago, I believed I had the perfect life. A thriving career as a regional sales director at a pharmaceutical company, a stunning home in Connecticut, a vacation property in Maine, and what I thought was a loving family. Then, everything crumbled like a fragile house of cards. It all began when my company announced a major restructuring. After 17 years of dedicated service, I was summoned to a meeting with senior management. They handed me a severance package and informed me that my role had been eliminated just like that. No warning, no transition period. I was devastated but tried to remain optimistic. The severance was reasonable, and with my experience, I assumed I'd secure a new job within a few months. I drove home that day in a daze, practicing how I would break the news to my wife. We had been married for 23 years, and although we had our ups and downs, I thought we were strong. My wife came from a wealthy background and had never really worried about finances. She worked part-time at an art gallery owned by her college friend, more as a hobby than a necessity. Our daughter attended an elite private university, something I was proud to afford. When I arrived home, my wife was hosting her book club. I waited until her friends left before telling her what had happened. Laid off? What do you mean, laid off? She questioned, her voice rising. How could you let this happen? I explained the company's restructuring, that it wasn't personal, that these things happen. Well, what's the plan? You must have a plan, she insisted. I told her about the severance, how I'd start job hunting immediately, that we had savings to sustain us for at least 6 months. Longer if we managed carefully. 6 months? You expect us to survive on savings for 6 months? What about Emma's tuition? What about our summer plans? Her reaction stunned me. I had anticipated support, maybe some concern, but not this immediate anger, as if I had deliberately chosen to lose my job. The following days were tense. I set up a home office and began applying for jobs, updating my LinkedIn profile, and reaching out to contacts. My wife barely spoke to me, except to ask if I had received any responses. Our daughter came home for weekend, and rather than discussing my job loss, my wife took her shopping. That night, I overheard them laughing in the kitchen while I was buried in job applications. When I finally told Emma about my job loss, her response mirrored her mother's. But, Dad, what about my study abroad program? You promised. No, I'm sorry this happened. Or, how are you feeling? Just immediate concern about how it impacted her plans. That weekend changed everything. On Sunday night, I overheard my wife talking to her sister on the phone. I don't know what we're going to do. He just sits at home on the computer all day. I always knew he wasn't management material, but I thought he'd at least keep his job until Emma finished college. Those words cut deep, but what followed hurt even more. I know. Mom and Dad warned me about marrying someone without a trust fund. At least Emma has my family's genes. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. 23 years of marriage, providing them with a comfortable life. And this was how she truly felt? I confronted her after the call. Is that really what you think of me? That I'm not management material? That you regret marrying me because I don't have a trust fund? She didn't even look ashamed. Don't be dramatic, Mark. I'm just frustrated. You have to understand this affects all of us. I'm well aware of that. I thought we were a team. She simply sighed and walked away. That night, she slept in the guest room. The next few weeks were surreal. My wife and daughter practically ignored me. They made plans without me, whispered when I entered the room, and treated me as if I were an inconvenience in my own home. My wife permanently moved into the guest room, claiming my late-night job searches disturbed her sleep. Emma stopped returning my calls and texts, only replying with short, dismissive messages. I had a few promising job interviews, but nothing materialized immediately. The job market for executives my age was more challenging than I had anticipated. Meanwhile, my wife's spending increased. New clothes, expensive dinners with friends, a weekend spa trip with Emma. When I confronted her, she brushed it off. We're fine. My parents can help if needed. Another slap in the face. Her parents had never approved of me, always treating me as though I wasn't good enough for their daughter, despite my success. The thought of becoming financially dependent on them was humiliating. The real wake-up call came when I checked our joint credit card statement. My wife had booked a European vacation for herself and Emma without even mentioning it to me. When I confronted her, she shrugged. We've been planning this for ages. Emma needs something to look forward to with all this uncertainty at home. Uncertainty that I am actively trying to fix. I countered. Don't you think a luxury European vacation is inappropriate right now? What do you expect us to do? Put our lives on hold because you can't find a job? Emma shouldn't have to suffer. That night, I lay awake, realizing how quickly my family had shown their true colors. Their love and respect were conditional, based solely on my ability to provide for them. The next day, my old college friend Tim called. We had stayed close over the years, and he was one of the few people I had confided in about my job loss and my family's reaction. Mark, my company is expanding in North Carolina. A sales director position is opening up next month. It's not pharmaceuticals, but with your experience, you'd be perfect. Want me to put in a word? It was the first glimmer of hope I'd had in weeks. I interviewed virtually and got the job. The salary was slightly lower than my previous position, but the lower cost of living made up for it. I didn't tell my wife. We were barely speaking anyway. Instead, I started making plans. The vacation home in Maine was solely in my name, a property I had inherited from my grandparents and renovated over the years. My wife always complained it was too rustic, too remote, not nearly as luxurious as her friend vacation homes, yet she never hesitated to use it when it suited her social calendar. I reached out to a real estate agent and listed the vacation home for sale. To my surprise, it was quickly purchased by a cash buyer. I allocated a portion of the proceeds as a down payment on a modest yet comfortable home in North Carolina, conveniently located near my new workplace. Next, I consulted with an attorney to explore my legal options regarding divorce and financial matters. I discovered that, given the duration of our marriage and the disparity in our earnings, I would likely be liable for substantial alimony. The lawyer advised me to delay filing until I had established residency in North Carolina, where the laws were slightly more favorable. To safeguard my financial interests, I withdrew my personal share from our joint accounts and opened new ones at a different bank. I made sure not to touch my wife's inheritance or the college fund we had set up for Emma. My actions weren't driven by malice. I was simply protecting myself. Meanwhile, my wife and daughter continued their pattern of exclusion and disregard. My wife arranged another shopping getaway with Emma, completely oblivious to the changes unfolding. Before their departure, I packed the belongings that truly mattered: family photographs, sentimental keepsakes, essential documents. I hired a moving company to transport my possessions to North Carolina and made arrangements for my car to be shipped. On the day they left for their trip, I penned a letter explaining my decision. I informed my wife that I had secured a new job in North Carolina and would be proceeding with a divorce. I disclosed that I had sold a vacation house and used my rightful portion of our savings to start anew. I left the letter on the kitchen counter, accompanied by the divorce papers my attorney had prepared. Then, without a backward glance, I boarded a plane to my new life. The explosion came 2 days later. My phone was inundated with calls and messages. First, from my wife. "What the hell do you think you're doing? Get back here immediately." Then Emma. "Dad, how could you do this to us? Mom is losing it. Call me now." Even my wife's sister chimed in. "Mark, you've really crossed a line. The family is considering legal action. This is unacceptable." My mother-in-law left a venomous voicemail. "I always knew you weren't good enough for our daughter. This pathetic stunt proves it. Our lawyer will be in touch." I chose not to respond. Instead, I concentrated on settling into my new home and preparing for my job. It was a bittersweet freedom. I grieved the family I thought I had while embracing the independence of my new existence. A week later, the messages shifted in tone. "Wife, Mark, please call me. We need to discuss this like adults." Emma, "Dad, I'm sorry if I hurt you. Please talk to me." Another week passed, and desperation seeped into their words. Wife, the bank contacted me about the mortgage. I don't know what to do. Please call me. Emma, Dad, Mom's really struggling. I'm scared for her. Can you at least let us know you're okay? I finally responded with a brief email, stating that I was fine and had started my new job. I provided my lawyer's contact details, making it clear that all communication regarding the divorce would go through him. I asked them to respect my decision. That message opened the floodgates. My wife bombarded my attorney with daily calls, alternating between threats and pleas. Financially, she was spiraling. She had never paid much attention to our finances, assuming money would always be available. Now, faced with the reality that her part-time gallery job couldn't sustain their extravagant lifestyle, and with her parents unwilling to provide indefinite support, she was floundering. Emma sent heartfelt emails. Dad, I took you for granted. I was selfish and spoiled. Please give me a chance to make things right. I miss you. I responded with kindness but firmness, assuring Emma that I would always love her, but needed time to heal from how they had treated me at my lowest point. I reassured her that I would continue to support her education as promised, but reiterated that my marriage to her mother was beyond repair. My wife's next strategy was to recruit mutual friends to plead her case. Neighbors, vacation acquaintances, even former colleagues. All suddenly had opinions on why I should reconcile. I confided in those I trusted and politely declined discussions with others. Then, I received an especially desperate email from my wife. She had been forced to sell our house at a loss to cover mounting debts. She had temporarily moved in with her sister, but that arrangement had soured. Her parents, refusing to bail her out, insisted she make amends with me. I was wrong, Mark. I see that now. I panicked when you lost your job and treated you horribly. Please let me come to North Carolina so we can start over. I didn't reply. Emma called in tears. Dad, Mom's a mess. Aunt Sandra won't let her stay much longer, and she lost her job at the gallery because she kept having breakdowns. I don't know what to do. I sympathized but stood firm. Emma, I'm sorry you're in the middle of this, but when I lost my job, you and your mother made your feelings about me very clear. I've moved on. But, Dad, people make mistakes. We were scared and reacted badly. Can't you forgive us? I have forgiven you, Emma. That's why I'm still here for you and honoring my commitment to your education. But forgiveness doesn't mean putting myself back in a situation where I'm only valued for my paycheck. Then, I was notified that my wife and daughter had booked flights to North Carolina. My lawyer strongly advised against meeting them without legal counsel present. Yet, a part of me was curious. Would they finally take accountability, or was this just another ploy to secure financial support? Regardless of their intentions, I was in a much better place. My new job was thriving. I had already brought in several high-profile clients. Through Tim and his wife, I had built a solid circle of friends. I joined a local hiking club and even started dating a compassionate, self-sufficient woman who valued me for who I was, not for what I could provide. Looking back, I realized that adversity had revealed my wife and daughter's true nature. It had been painful, but ultimately, it was a gift. At 52, I had been given a second chance to build a life filled with authenticity and genuine connections. As for their upcoming visit, I had yet to decide whether I would meet with them. But one thing was certain, I wouldn't be returning to Connecticut, and I would never again allow myself to be reduced to nothing more than an ATM. Some bridges, once burned, should remain forever crossed.